people give me a lot of credit for writing things that have a lot of cultural antecedent, and all I can say is, well, I'm the person I am, and it's like my whole life I just sort of roll around the world like a ball made of tape, picking up all sorts of weird linty influences, and what you get is, what I've decided to write and produce from that lint. Uh, let's see. From being a phone tech, I moved up to Milwaukee. I became a full-time writer, and 10 years after that, after a couple bad relationships, a couple very weird hobbies, um, a lot of just running around the Midwest and accidentally falling to the lake, a lot of things like that. I wrote a novel which ended up becoming Siren Queen. I submitted it to the Angry Robot contest, and wouldn't you believe it, they didn't immediately get back to me with the Nobel or something like that. So I had to wait until they rejected that one. And while I was waiting, there was a call for submissions from Tor.com, and it was a call for unagented submissions for novellas between 20,000 and 40,000 words. And I saw that and I said, oh, I don't have an agent. I can probably write 20,000 words. So I took about 5 weeks, a month or so, and I wrote The Empress of Salt and Fortune because it was just a cool idea. Can I tell a story using objects? Because the point of The Empress of Salt and Fortune is telling the reign of an empress through the artifacts she leaves behind. And I had the idea for a while. I'm like, are you a poem? Turns out I'm not a poet. Are you a weird art exhibit that is just made up of placards? Am I supposed to be building dolls now or something? And I'm like, no, it can be a novella. So it became a novella.
What is up, everybody? You're listening to episode 126 of SFF Addicts. I'm your host, Adrian M. Gibson, and welcome to your weekly dive into the world of science fiction, fantasy, and writing craft. Joining me today is a special guest host, as MJ has had a busy-ass month and needs some rest. So please welcome back a friend of the show, former guest, the queen of my days, Greta Kelly. How you doing, Greta?
I'm good. How are you doing, Adrian?
Doing very well, very well. I don't have a physical copy with me, but if you want some heists and some god killing and all kinds of fun shit with shenanigans and found family, then go pick up The Queen of Days by Greta Kelly.
I'm as close to MJ as possible. So we just swapped out Midwestern heist book authors.
Yeah, Midwestern fantasy heists.
There we go.
Just change hair color and that's it.
That's a compliment. I love MJ. Yeah. I'll be her blonde doppelganger. It's
fine. High status for both.
Well, speaking of books, if anyone is looking for an awesome fungal noir, crazy mystery book, check out The Mushroom Blues. Truly unlike any other book I've ever read in the best possible way.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome,
If
friend.
you want to get high in a fictional sense, then I got you covered. As well, a quick note for listeners, the official SFF Addicts Patreon and merch store are live, so check the links in the description to support what we do here. Also, don't forget to rate and read the podcast on your favorite podcast app, and subscribe to the FanFiAddict YouTube channel where this and every other episode of the show is available in full video. And just a quick shout out to our newest patron on Patreon, Maria Irshad. Thank you so much for supporting the show and keeping us doing what we do. And now, welcoming today's guest, Nghi Vo, award-winning author of Siren Queen, The Chosen and the Beautiful, The Singing Hills Cycle, and more, including her new novel. I guess, is it a novel or a novella? The City in Glass. It's short, but it's awesome.
It's absolutely a novel. I made sure of that because they said they wanted a novel. It is absolutely 51,000 words, so it's a novel.
By 1,000 words, she got you. The City in Glass, which is out now. Welcome to the show, Nghi. How are you?
Hello, Adrian. Hello, Greta. I'm so happy to be here. Hello.
Yay.
Oh, it's wonderful to have you here. Let's start off with an intro for anyone who doesn't know you. If you can tell them a bit about yourself and your books.
Okay, I'm a Milwaukee-based fantasy writer. Mostly I just deal with anything that doesn't, shouldn't, or wouldn't exist. And I've been doing this for about 4 years. Before that, I was a full-time copywriter. So this is the much more exciting job. And I have a book coming out in October, which is called The City in Glass, which is a novel. As we have so pointed out, it does make novels, so I'm hanging on to that. And but the nice thing is it's a very short novel, so if you get too angry with it, you're only angry with me for like a good like an evening at most.
Yeah. And you can just start the next day, rest on it, let it go,
Sleep on
move
it.
on with your
It's
life.
fine.
Yeah. Go read something by Greta or Sean McGuire or T. Kingfisher. It's like you just clear it out. I never existed. It's fine.
Well,
But you
I
do
don't
exist,
buy
and you're
that.
here.
I'm sure it's going to just stick with people.
Oh, come on. Does
so.
Milwaukee really exist? No one believes in the Midwest. It's not a real place.
You're both just an illusion, a figment of my
It's a
imagination.
dream.
Greta, that's what it feels like talking to people from New York or the West Coast. It's like, where are you from?
That's in Canada, right?
That's how I felt as a Canadian. It was like,
Oh,
basically, like I grew up in British Columbia, but I was born in Ontario. And it's like people forget about everything in between British Columbia and Ontario. And then they forget about everything east of Quebec. And it's like there's just these pockets of mystery within Canada, just like all the flyover states in the US.
Well, pockets of mystery is a lot
sounds
more
great.
evocative than flyover state.
Instead of like, oh, there's a fuck ton of corn and soy.
We've got to work on our branding here, Nghi. This
Yeah,
is
you
not
do.
acceptable. Well, I'd love to talk
Oh,
about
God.
your backstory a little bit, Nghi. So, like, how did you get into SFF? Was it like a book you read growing up, a TV show, movie, video games? Like, what was your entry point into the genre?
Okay, so I was maybe about 9 or 10, and my parents had dragged me along to a garage sale in some very nice subdivision, and I found this kind of falling apart cardboard box, and I had to like shift aside like about 5 copies of Thomas Harris's Red Dragon. So I'm like, I'd already been tricked once. That is not child suitable fantasy at all. So I found this book that had a robot horse on it, and I'm a child. Robot horses look really, really damn cool. So I'm like, I'll take this for a dime. So I took it home, and it turned out to be the book "The Warlock in Spite of Himself" by Christopher Stasheff, and it was, I didn't quite understand all of it because it was about, the power of democracy to save the known planets, and essentially man lands on SCA planet and has a robot horse, and it's hilarious, it's fun, it's weird 70s sci-fi, and that's how I kind of fell headfirst into a moldy cardboard box full of sci-fi.
I mean, 10 cents is like,
Yeah.
you take your chances, I feel like you lucked out.
I
There's a
think
lot
so,
worse
too.
that you could have gone.
No, I mean, I could have reread Red Dragon. That was really hard on me as a kid. But I did actually meet Christopher Stasheff when I became a college student, because he lived in the town I ended up going to college in, right? So I met his daughter, who did like public access TV, and she needed an actress to play the personification of Yellow, I think it was, because this is public access TV. And she said, "Hey, you like my father's books. Would you be willing to act in this for his autograph?" And I'm like, yes, I will do that. But then she hadn't really set us up for it. So I'm like sitting in the Stasheff's living room. I'm wearing a yellow curtain, and I have like a copy of the book that I found in the cardboard box in my bag. And he shows up, and he's like Santa Claus, he's like SCA Santa Claus. And I'm just sitting there, and we're kind of looking at each other. And Eleanor finally comes in and says, "Nee, do you have something for Dad to sign?" And I said, "Yes, I do." And she's like, "Dad, do you have something? Would you like to sign for Nee?" And he's like, "Yes, I would." So, and that's how I learned that sci-fi authors are dorks. It was great.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, who's this girl sitting in my living room?
Wearing a curtain.
In a curtain. Oh my God. And that daughter just knowing how to ply your deepest desires.
Oh, come on. I was in college at the time. I would do amazing amounts of things for a cheeseburger.
Yeah, let alone a signature.
Let alone a
Got you
signature.
into sci-fi.
Yes.
Amazing. Well, after college, or what point did you get into writing? Was it like you'd started reading a lot of sci-fi and fantasy and then thinking like, I actually really like doing this? Or was it something that you kind of stumbled upon later on?
Well, I've always kind of done it because it got me money and attention. When I was a little kid, I used to like send like the little kid submission areas to my local paper, and I got a couple scholarships that way, which was really important for going to the University of Illinois. And then, there was college, which kind of just does take a lot of joy out of you when it comes to writing a lot of times.
And reading, not only
And oh
writing.
God,
Yeah.
the first time I
My
was able to
God.
read a book after college, it was beautiful. I was so
Yeah.
happy. And so, after college, I was absolutely prepared for a career in absolutely fuck all. So I was working I was working as a phone tech. I was helping people get onto the internet and explaining to them why they didn't have internet because they didn't actually have service with us, that kind of thing. And I ended up working an overnight gig, which is just sort of just ISP code for I do nothing at night and except like stare at drunks out the window. So that's a great time to start writing. And it was something along the lines of I found Strange Horizons, which was they're still active, they're still fantastic, award-winning e-zine, and I sent them a story and they published it, and most importantly, they sent me pizza money. So I sort of went from there. So I'm like, oh, I can do this, and and so we continue to today.
I don't have to fight for my cheeseburgers.
Have you ever tried to fight like a bunch of reenactors for food? It's not pretty.
I have not. Please elaborate upon this.
Oh, well, I mean, okay, that's not fair because I used to run around in the SCA, and the only thing that you need to know about the SCA is if you show up and put on a funny hat, someone's going to feed you. But but sometimes you have to fight for like the good stuff, like the marzipan or the fact that people are giving away 10-year-old mead. It's pretty cool.
I love everything about this.
Look, you just wander around the Midwest until someone stuffs food in your face. It's not hard.
Yeah.
I mean, that
I mean,
is true. That tracks.
You're really lucking out if you get meat and marzipan, though. Let's be serious.
Yeah.
It's a very good night.
That is not like everyday shit that you stumble across,
No.
especially in the Midwest.
Yeah, brats and beers, that's like a little bit more common,
Yeah.
or some like cheese curds, but marzipan.
You fancy people.
So I'd love to talk, like, what was the entry point from there to the Empress of Salt and Fortune? Like, where did that idea come from, and where did that like beautiful Southeast Asian inspired world emerge in your brain?
I mean, people give me a lot of credit for writing things that have a lot of cultural antecedent, and all I can say is, well, I'm the person I am, and it's like my whole life I just sort of roll around the world like a ball made of tape, picking up all sorts of weird linty influences, and what you get is what I've decided to write and produce from that lint. Uh, but let's see. From being a phone tech, I moved up to Milwaukee. I became a full-time writer, and 10 years after that, after a couple bad relationships, a couple very weird hobbies, a lot of just running around the Midwest and accidentally falling to the lake, a lot of things like that. I wrote a novel which ended up becoming Siren Queen. I submitted it to the Angry Robot contest, and wouldn't you believe it, they didn't like immediately get back to me with the Nobel or something like that. So I had to wait until they rejected that one. And while I was waiting, there was a call for submissions from Tor.com, and it was a call for unagented submissions for novellas between 20,000 and 40,000 words. And I saw that and I said, oh, I don't have an agent. I can probably write 20,000 words. So I took about like 5 weeks, a month or so, and I wrote The Empress of Salt and Fortune because it was just a cool idea. Can I tell a story using objects? Because the point of The Empress of Salt and Fortune is telling the reign of an empress through the artifacts she leaves behind. And I had the idea for a while. I'm like, are you a poem? Turns out I'm not a poet. Are you a weird art exhibit that is just made up of placards? Am I supposed to like be building dolls now or something? And I'm like, no, it can be a novella. So it became a novella. And a few months later, I got this email from Roshi Chen, who was my editor at Tor.com. And she was like, "Oh, this is fantastic." And I just read it. And I was thinking, man, this is a very, very sweet rejection. She's being very nice. And then I got to the end and she said she won. I'm like, oh my God. And then like 2 days later, I got an agent. So it was a very intense few weeks.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the cool thing about publishers doing these sorts of open calls and
Oh my God,
and
yes.
stuff like that is like,
Mhm.
you can, if you luck out, you know, you can get an editor and be like, I want this.
Yeah.
And then you can reach out to agents and be like, I have an offer. And they're like, okay, let's do this. Like,
And they're like, thank
skip
you.
the madness and bullshit of the query trenches.
Actually, Diana, who is my agent, said very clearly that she didn't know she did not know I'd been accepted at Tor.com before she actually made the offer. She was
okay.
very pleased that she said she wanted me before she heard that. She's like, so you know what we have is real. I'm like, this is a weird place for my
Not
career.
tainted.
Because for any authors out there, if you find real relationships in the publishing industry, you've hit a good spot.
Yeah.
You've hit a really good spot. So you took that first book, and then I love how that whole thing progressed, because it's like, I'm just gonna toss this out there to everyone. Just take a fucking chance. Like, you never know what might end up working, what might end up in front of the right person at the right time. And in the case of me, it's like you just saw this open call and wrote a novella in a month and submitted it, and look at what's happened since then, right?
You never know who's going to fall in love with you. You never know who you're going to fall with. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you took that first book, and I imagine Tor.com was like, can we have more, please? How did that whole process go? And how did you kind of like expand upon this story that you wrote so, you know, so carefree and just submitting to this competition?
Well, the thing to remember is that for 15 years before that, I had been a copywriter. So if you tell me to write something, the next thing that comes out of my mouth is, how much are you paying me and when's the deadline, you know? So so what happened was Empress was just out. I'd had a very good experience working with my new agent at the time, Diana Fox. I'd had a fantastic experience working with Roshi Chen. And I'm like, this is nice. I'm going to go back to my regular day job of writing about caring for cockroaches. I thought it was going to be like this weird, I thought traditional publication was going to be this hobby that I did while I was, you know, doing the real work, which has to do with care guides for lizards and what vacuum cleaner parts are the best. And so Roshi gets me on the phone and she says, hey, could this be a series? And because I like money and because I like ongoing gigs, I said, absolutely, this can be a series. I had never thought about it. I mean, I knew the characters, Chi, who is the storytelling cleric protagonist of the Singing Hills series, I knew that they were off having adventures with their memory spirit friend, Almost Brilliant. I knew that. They were always going to be out there. They were always going to be doing their thing. And, you know, every now and then I would probably just check in and say, hey, how are you guys doing? And they'd be fine. I didn't think I was going to get a chance to write about them. And then Roshi said, can you make this a series? And okay, here's a freelancing secret, right? You don't agree to a job when you're 100% sure that you can do it. You agree at 70% or you agree at 80%. So I was like about 70% sure I could write the series. And turns out 5 books in, turns out I can.
Yeah, that you met that 100% somewhere down the line. It came to you later.
We figured it out eventually. Yes.
Yeah.
So obviously this started as novellas because you entered that contest.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever at any point consider, maybe I want to switch this over and make them into novels? Or has novella just always just been the niche for you for those stories?
Like Martha Wells with Murderbot. It's like there are majority novellas, but then there are some shorter novels and stuff in there.
So here's the secret about Empress of Salt and Fortune. I think I shorted Tor.com about 400 words, maybe only 200. I'm not sure. It is just barely into the thing to be a novella. And as it turns out, length is still my biggest problem. Can I be done now? Am I not done yet? Like, if you've noticed, all my novels are really short too. So, I mean, I could see doing a few short stories. I could see doing some short stories in the world of Singing Hills. Novels would take more work from me, and I'm so lazy. I hate doing work. Please stop making me do work.
Oh, come on now. It's like, please stop supporting my career.
No, people seem to really like the novellas. I'm like, what if they can't tolerate me for more than 20,000 words? What happens then?
Yeah, but then, you know, like Siren Queen got picked up. and then you published Chosen and the Beautiful. So it's like you're negating yourself by the very things that you produced.
Those are very, very short
know, but
novels. They're
still.
so short.
We're getting into technicalities.
We are. And honestly, if like I said, give me a deadline and give me some cash, I'll write whatever you want.
He's got you covered, whatever you need. Even if you want copy editing,
It's fine.
Lizards, vacuum cleaners.
I once had a job where I was working with this alpaca farmer, and they sent me videos of how to do things on alpacas. And I do mean things like, things like how to lance an abscess on an alpaca. Do you know how much pus comes out when that happens? I had to write about that.
No.
You think I have any pride left? I really don't.
Oh my God. So this is what copy editing gets you, is like you're introduced to the strange nuances of human culture and the products and things that we put out to this
You
world.
really are.
Oh my God. I feel like, at some point you have to like pull that out of your memory bank and put it into a story. There's a llama somewhere with some abscess.
Well, it's important to reach out and find representation where you find it, I suppose, sad little alpaca somewhere.
Yeah. I mean, I live in Ecuador. It's like I got lots of alpacas.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
But you two.
They are so prone to
few.
issues.
So few alpacas in the Midwest. Okay, let's get into your novels then. Your short novels, however you want to frame them. Siren Queen and the Chosen and the Beautiful. So this is something that I've really come to appreciate, specifically through Chloe Gong, because I love certain time periods in world history, but then I adore when like fantasy and weird elements start coming into the mix. And so Siren Queen and the Chosen and the Beautiful, it's like you have historical settings, but there are fantasy elements that you're incorporating in there. So how do you kind of take the historical setting and use that to kind of hold up a mirror to both the present and the past, but also blending in and infusing those fantastical elements and making it a little bit cooler than it originally would be?
So I take a lot of public transportation. So a lot of mornings I'm just sort of standing around, very cold, looking around going, wouldn't it be funnier if that was dragons? Like, and when I say that would be dragons, I mean like the local bagel place or that 12-year-old or the bus. So, I mean, it's mostly about looking at the world and seeing, well, okay, here's this cool thing that I found is really fun to do. You start with function, like what is a thing meant to do, like shoes or cars or bagels. And you think, what else could be fulfilling this function? And sometimes it gets really weird when you don't have a lot of sleep and it's very cold and you just want the bus to come.
What an interesting thought exercise, though. It's very Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah, but then how do you say that, like bagels and dragons and all that kind of stuff, and think like, okay, how can I make history more interesting through this sort of lens?
Well, I think it starts with an appreciation for how freaking weird history is in the first place. Like, so the book Siren Queen, which is the first novel I'd ever written, and honestly the first novel I'd ever actually finished, and which became my second novel published. I was, I'd always been a big fan of early Hollywood history, and I've read a lot of fantasy novels, so a lot of fun fairyland stories out there, and rules and myth and lore. And one night I was just talking with my friend Grace, and I said, hey, have you ever noticed that fairyland, like Hollywood, runs off contracts and full and true names and exercises of power? And oh my God, do you remember those orphans who worked for Hollywood? And aren't these basically like changelings? And my friend Grace, she's just sitting on the other end of the computer going, is she gonna stop? She let me keep going for like 2 hours with periodic reminders like, weren't you planning to get like dinner at some point? Weren't you planning to do like something else? And then I hit the 2-hour mark. I'm like, I guess I'm writing a novel about this. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you can't unsee it now that you've mentioned
No.
all of that.
No, and the fun part is the where it becomes a novel is where you just start digging in, and it's like what terrible things have happened to the person I'm making all of these circumstances happen to. It's great.
And Hollywood is like the perfect fodder for that, because it's just like a never-ending vortex of
I mean,
it's
power, it's illusion, it's beauty, it's
best.
aesthetics.
but also like so much of the worst of
Right.
humanity.
Absolutely.
But yet simultaneously the object of like everyone's desire. Like
Yeah,
if
yeah.
only I could be
Exactly.
that, not
Yeah.
realizing.
And then here we are recording the week like P. Diddy got arrested. You're like, I don't want any of that. Like,
yeah,
please
maybe
no.
I dodged a bullet just
Yeah.
living in the flyover states.
Yeah, I don't want to go to a puffy party. Thank you very much.
Oh, I don't even go to parties out here. It was so funny because I wrote Siren Queen, which is about Hollywood, and I wrote The Chosen the Beautiful, which is a Great Gatsby riff. And those are such like glamorous, exciting, beautiful, social novels. And I'm in here, and I'm like, and my role in any party is to hang out in the kitchen, petting whatever dog has come in to find me, or or it's like it's hit 9:00, and I'm like, well, good night, everyone, I'm done.
I did my time. Bye.
It's like, look, I brought the chicken. I brought the buffalo chicken dip. What else do you want from me?
Yeah. Now I'm gonna go home and write about glamorous stuff.
Well, I'm gonna go home and play video games and pet cats, but yeah, that other thing too. Sometimes.
Well, I love that you mentioned the Great Gatsby riff because, my God, that had to be like so much pressure. Did you feel a lot of pressure when you were taking on like such a monumental classic like the Great Gatsby? Or were you like, screw it, I could do better?
Or were you like, fuck yeah, let's do this?
Yeah.
Well,
Let's take this apart.
In all fairness, like I said, I've said one thing that people have asked me that about the Great Gatsby, and I'm like, okay, here's the thing: if you are a U.S. High school student, you were made to read the Great Gatsby. We consider it part of our American canon for some very interestingly accidental reasons. And I'm like, okay, you gave it to me, and if it's a real gift, then you don't care what I do with it. This is mine now. But in terms of stress, it sort of was this. It's not exactly an accident, but the way it happened was I was talking with my agent, and she asked me what I was up to, and I told her about this really cool book that I was writing. Right, it was about this girl who was raised by ghosts, and it was really neat. I was super excited. And she's like, "Oh, okay. Do you got anything else?" And I'm like, "Okay, fine. How about a story about the Great Gatsby told from the view of a Vietnamese American Jordan Baker, and everything is magic, and it's the 1920s, and there's demons, and there's deals with the devil, and there's paper hearts and paper magic." And she goes really quiet, and I'm like, she's being really quiet right now. And she's like, "Nee, I want you to stop writing the novel you're writing, and I want you to write that instead, because The Great Gatsby comes out of copyright in a year."
Oh my God, the timing. Oh my gosh.
It was
like
hilarious.
That. Public domain, baby. Let's do this.
Look, this is if you ever want to know why I'm in traditional publication, it's because of things like that. Otherwise, I'd be like, la 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 la, something's obviously happening over there. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, that's like one of the few times where like the slow churn of traditional publishing was actually to your benefit, as opposed to like it's like next year. Okay, we can work.
I've got a whole year. I can do this in a year.
Self-published authors just like fuck this.
I wrote Chosen the Beautiful. Like I spent like a month doing research, and then I spent 3 months writing it. So that was a little intense. My sister was also getting married at the time, and I was actually still copywriting at that point. So it was a lot of words.
Yeah, that's a lot in 3 months, but
yeah.
You did it. You did the thing.
It was pretty funny. It's like I was like in Vegas at an all-night diner, and I'm just like writing at the diner, and I'm like, is there any place I can't go in here and gamble? And I reached out my hand, and it landed on like this weird little gambling device that just sat on the table next to me. I'm like, no, this is what I do now.
That sounds like a fantasy. It's like, is there somewhere for me to gamble, and it's just like sparkly object appears next
That's
to you?
just Vegas. That's literally just Vegas. I think it only took me 20 steps to get from my plane to something where I could lose money.
And the bagel dragon appears with the gambling.
Just
I would
throw
read
fucking
that.
Sparkles in your face and be like, give me your money.
That's also the strip. So yeah, that reads.
Yeah, true. Oh my God. Well, speaking of crazy cities, let's talk about The City in Glass, your newest book. So can you pitch listeners and viewers on this almost novel?
It is a novel. I promise it's a novel. It's real. They've made me
I'm just
stick with
messing with you at this point.
I'm so fragile right now. No, I'm fine. Okay, so
Well, talking of fragility, The City in Glass. Come on.
excellent. So The City in Glass, the working title was 300 Years of Grief and City Planning. It's what happens when a demon falls violently in love with the city, makes it hers, and then angels show up, destroy it. And it's all about what happens after that. It's about falling in love. It's about forgiveness, but not really. It's about how cities come to live in us even as we live in them. And it's about the fact that if anything is going to save us, anything at all, it's always going to be in what we love. It's not going to be in who loves us, it's going to be in what we love. And this is my entire thesis on that idea.
I love that summary of the book because I was trying to explain it to my husband and I was just like, I don't know what words are, but it's beautiful and I love it.
I hope it was a good time.
Yeah. But like really one of the most special things about it is that so like thematic and vibe heavy in like a really good way. But I found myself wondering, like as a writer, since this book was more vibe heavy, like how do you strike the balance between that and like having enough plot to keep the story moving? Because it seemed like it had to be like a delicate like needle to thread.
Um, okay, so here's the way the book works. I got a specific phrase which you told me when we were hanging out this past weekend that it was spoilers. So I don't know if I'm going to say it here, but for me the story was I knew that there was a scene that I was going to end on. I'm like, oh, that's where the book ends. I just have to get there. So I just had to get the characters from where they started, which is um, the demon named Vitrine, whose city it is, and the angel who destroyed it. I have to get them from the positions where they start to the ending. And I'm like, okay, so this trip is going to take 300 years. This trip is going to take finding dragons in cliffs. This trip is going to take refugees from another land. This trip is going to take digging around and rerouting rivers. It's going to take murder. It's going to take a rather lot of murder and history and the idea of a future. I'm like, okay, if we can just get them there, that's fine. So I don't know if it was a balance so much as just, hitting the road.
Yeah, because I mean, if you have that endpoint in mind, I think it is a lot easier, regardless of whether it's a very character or plot driven book. And in this case, it's like, I would say like equal parts character and atmosphere and sort of like setting. Like the setting is as much a character as
As
Vitrine
Vitrine or the
herself
demon, yeah. Or
or
the
the
angel, I
angel.
mean.
And so it's like finding all those little points that they can get to, those landmarks, and the ways in which those sort of build upon their characters and their relationship. I think it's like, yeah, if it was like 500 pages, this would be a different conversation. But
You
I
might
think
be really mad at me if it was 500 pages.
but the length that you set it at, it worked because there was enough momentum with the things that were happening. And I love how you just like casually dropped murder in there. It's like, yo, demon girl, just like, I'm gonna grow this plant. And it's such a beautiful plant. Turns
Yeah.
out it like has poisonous berries. Let's see what those berries do.
Let's just see what happens.
I'm just gonna eat this. I'm just gonna eat this girl. That's fine. You don't mind watching, do you?
Yeah, exactly. That's true love.
Is it a girl? Is it a bird? That's that's a detail.
Okay, well, let's get into the setting. So we have the city of Azrael, which is kind of like Vitrine's baby.
Mhm.
How did you use that city as a way to keep the reader invested, but also kind of like keep Vitrine going as a character? And I made a note to myself because reading your book, the first thing that came to mind was a book called Invisible Cities by Italo Calvino.
Mhm.
I don't know how much of like an inspiration that particular book may have been on this one, but for anyone wanting to check it out, it's like Marco Polo in the court of Kublai Khan, basically just like, I'm going to tell you about all the different cities that I visited, but it's so fucking interesting in like a way that you would not expect to say, just tell me where you went, like tell me where you traveled. And that ended up being like a fascinating journey. So talk to me about the city of Azrael and how you use that to kind of like keep things going.
Italo Calvino's Invisible Cities is about the next thing to a sacred book for me. It's a thing I believe in. It's a thing that I love very, very much. You nailed it. Yeah, absolutely.
You're like, vindication.
Yes.
And now, Greta, you have to go read it.
And now I have to read it.
Yes, you'll dig it. And the thing is, if you want to try reading it, if you just want to try opening it and just trying a few pages at a time, there is a sequence to it, but it's not necessary actually. So I mean, that might be kind of fun to do. Here's the thing: I think that one of the most profound ways we say "I love you" to someone else is, "Who have you been and where have you been?" And there's this kind of twisted similarity between location and personhood. Where were you when you were in love? Where were you when you were your most upset? Where were you when you knew that you didn't want to be the person you had been before? And what it comes down to is a city is a place. A city is an organism. A city is a living thing because a city can die. And what Azrael is to me is this place I got to create. And I knew that if City and Glass was going to work at all, and I hope it does, was the fact that I have to make the reader fall in love with the city just as much as the demon does. And we talk about loving cities. I mean, I love Milwaukee. I love Chicago. I love Vegas. I love a lot of cities, and I love them different. And I love them like I love people. And I love them like you can only love cities. And I can't stand them sometimes. I'm like, come on, you walk out, and someone dumps a bunch of trash on you, and my 20s were weird, and you can't help but realize you can hate them too. You get so tired of them, just like you can get tired and angry with the people that you love. And that's what Azrael is for me. It was my experiment in seeing if I could make readers love a city like I love a city. How about that?
That's beautiful.
I love that description.
I love that.
Yeah. Because I've had so many experiences like that just based on the places I've lived.
Right.
Where it's like, I love Vancouver because I spent time studying there and everything. And I have these associations with Vancouver. And now I go back and there's a certain sort of like nostalgic feel that you have as well. And then I lived in Berlin, and it's like Berlin has certain vibes for me, but I was like, that city burnt me the fuck out.
There you go.
In a way that a place like Berlin can burn you out, or like people who live in New York. It's like you live in New York, and there are some people who are just like, I can't do it anymore. Because like a city has a pace. It has like a certain sort of like a lifestyle that it imparts upon the people who inhabit it. And so it's like, if it's a really fast-paced city, you're going to get wrapped up in that kind of lifestyle. And then now, like living in Quito, I'm like, okay, I have this different association with Quito and like this love that I have for it. And now that I have a family here, it's like, this is where my sons were born and all this different kind of stuff. And so there's like this really beautiful, poignant relationship between you yourself as a person and your relationship with different cities based on when you were there in your life, or the people that you can associate it with as well. So yeah, you're just like making me feel like really happy and nostalgic right now. Thanks, Nick.
Giving us all the feels.
So many feels, dude.
Well, apart from Azrael being like the love of Vitrine's life, there's this other character, the angel, who she very much starts out with a seething, burning hatred for. He will not go away. And eventually that relationship changes. Yeah.
After what he does, it's like,
so
man,
can you just talk to listeners and viewers about that relationship and how, and you did such a good job about this, of like transforming that relationship over time.
300 years is a long time to be the same thing. I don't think anyone can manage it, even if you are immortal. Okay, so the demon, we have the demon named Vitrine, and we have her city. And then we have one of the people, one of the things, one of the beings, one of the forces on a cosmic level that destroyed it, which is, I call the angel. And maybe he has a name. I don't know it.
I was going to ask you. I wanted to know. Like, just DM me. What's his name?
Well, you gotta know. It's like there's only one of him, the angel. It's like that's clear enough. That has served the purpose of language. We're fine. And what happens is, on his way out from a very self-satisfied destruction of a beautiful city, Vitrine curses him. She throws a piece of her heart into him, and now he's in love with her. And here's the question of what love means. We have love the emotion, we have love the action. And I think for humans, as for anything immortal, as for anything that is wandering around with some sense, we need to not confuse love the action and love the emotion, because love the emotion, it is the thing inside us. Love the action is what we put out into the world. So for Vitrine, there's love of her city, which is what she builds and grows and prunes and occasionally crushes a little bit because she's like, oh, that's not healthy. I'm going to take that right out. And then you have the angel who now loves Vitrine. That's the emotion. And he needs to learn to express it in a way that doesn't make her seethingly angry because he doesn't have a choice anymore. And this story is, what choices do you have when you don't have a choice? And that would be the angel's portion in this.
And I love his attempts at this because it's like,
Yeah.
it's so sad and cute at the same time.
It's real bad.
Yeah, it's real bad. It's like he feels like a fucking teenager trying to woo his crush.
Well, and it also feels like such like a screw you to the insta love as a trope.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you might be into me, but nah.
We take
Pass.
300 years to get to a cup of tea, I think.
Yeah.
And also, like, how perfect for Vitrine to just like never even ask his name.
She's like, that's like a you problem.
Yeah, I don't need to know more about you.
How many more hundreds of years until she finally asks him? Or she just like doesn't care. It's like, you're my angel. That's it.
I love that you did get that is her angel, actually.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. It's like I don't know why that Shaggy song came into my head. Fucking throwback to like the early 2000s. Oh my god. Okay, so why would the city, because I love this developing relationship of theirs over hundreds of years, and how fucking awkward and wonderful it is at times. Why, like, the city itself, why Azrael is such a good foil for their relationship?
Because I think if there's a lot of things, there's a lot of me going on in this book, which is uh, a very vulnerable thing for me to say. This is one of the books that I care about the most. I mean, you want to say you care about all your children, but one of the reasons why I'm not a parent is I care about some of them more than others, and this is one of the big ones. And what it comes down to is the question of, what can you love? What are you allowed to love? What are you capable of loving? And I would have to say that loving almost anything is easier than loving another person. You can love playing the guitar, you can love sunsets, you can love a certain 200-year-old building on the shores of Boston. And then when you get to loving a person, when you get to loving someone who you don't control, who is just wandering around the world doing what they want, that's much, much harder. The city is easy, even if it's been knocked to the ground, the city's easy. The angel is difficult, and as difficult as things are for Vitrine, I wanted something easy. She can always love the city.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'd love to ask you a little bit about that concept of even love, because one of the humans whose story that Vitrine, reminisces about is someone who, like, I believe on his deathbed, like, warns her, don't just love the idea of Azrael, love all of it, love all that it is, good and bad and anywhere in between. Do you think Vitrine is ever like truly able to do that, or is she still too attached to the Azrael that was or the Azrael that could be?
How about she can do it about as well as any of us can do it? When you love something, right? And you guys know exactly what I mean when you were talking about loving a book. We can love a book before we write it, and then hopefully we love it after we've written it. But those are very different things. There's a process, there's alchemy, there's transmutation, there's transformation, and at the end, is it the same love? And I don't know if it is, but love has to change too. And I think for us and for Vitrine, it's like we are always doing our best, and if we can remember to try to love things, maybe not as we wish they were, but as they actually are, we're going to be in better shape.
What a good life
Agreed.
lesson.
So deep, Nee.
Not really. I'm just here to make a buck. You know that.
Oh, modest. Come on now. Okay, so how does the act of rebuilding Azrael, whatever her deepest desire is for Vitrine, how do you think it changes her? You know, someone who's, I think like this is a character whose change is kind of a bit more difficult to define. The angel is easier to define.
Very.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, how does this love story between the city and the demon kind of change the demon?
God, I'm talking about love so much with this one, and I'm like, can I please just go talk about mammoths and domestication again? This one's hard. But it's what the question is always, what can I love? What else can I love? It's so dangerous to love one thing. It's always dangerous to love one person. It's dangerous. I mean, not to be too pragmatic about it. You never put all your eggs in one basket. You know that as a farmer, and you definitely know that as a freelancer. And for Vitrine, part of it is she loves her city. She loves her family. What else can she love? And she would probably say at the beginning, I can love this. I love my family. I love my city. Fuck everything else. And she never loses a certain amount of that fuck everything else. But at the end of the day, she loves the angel too. That's for me, that's very clear. And if you can expand yourself to love something that destroyed everything that you cared about, and I'm not saying everyone should do it. I'm not saying everyone should do it. That shows how far you've come, and it shows that you've changed, whether you like it or not. And a lot of times, when you see change coming, it's like, oh God, no, not another learning experience. But it's coming, and how gracefully do we take that? In my case, not very gracefully at all. But
that's so true. I don't want to learn. I'm done.
No, I'm done.
I love how the City in Glass is like fantasy relationship advice.
I mean, maybe don't take relationship advice from me. I'm not very good at it. So.
We're just like fantasies in general, probably not. Not usually the most healthy relationships.
No, but that's where all the drama and the tension comes from. That's why we love it. Don't base your life off of it.
Be here for the catharsis. Be here for the moment where you're like, hey, have you ever wanted to ruin your life? Let's go.
Oh my God. All right. Well, we're going to close out. I'm going to ask you for a two-parter. If you can give listeners and viewers a good bit of soundbite writing advice, and B, a weird or random fact that you find to be utterly fascinating. And I know you're going to have weird random facts.
I can't wait for the random fact.
Fucking llama abscesses and stuff. Alpacas, sorry.
Okay. For writing advice, the first draft is for you, so be as indulgent as you want to be. The second draft is when you're going to start thinking about who else it's for. So, that's a good way to sort of keep the speed going on a first draft, which is usually one of the hardest parts, because when you're done, you can edit it, and you can edit it into almost anything else. So, how about that for writing advice? How about the fact, let's see, interesting facts. So there's this thing called Dhaka muslin. It's been made in the region that is now known as Bangladesh, and they used it throughout antiquity. This was something that emperors in Rome and China bought for themselves because it was linen that was so fine it was nearly see-through. We're talking like between 1,200 and 3,000 cotton threads per inch. And it was lost around about the 1700s because of British imperialism. And there are now studies underway to regrow the plant it came from and to relearn how to weave it. Part of the process of which involves spinning it on boats because the humidity needs to be high enough so the threads don't break. So how about that?
That is amazing.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
That is so cool.
So neat.
Damn you, British. We lost these fine-ass threads because of you.
No, honestly, actually, if you can actually go back and see cartoons of the British talking about it, it's like, well, young women practically naked because the muslin's so transparent, but they're paying upwards of about 7,000 pounds, modern pounds, a yard for this stuff. So,
wow,
yeah,
let's bring it back.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It'll be like heirloom. It'll be like heirloom fabric. I love this.
One of the parts that got to when I was reading about it was the fact that there are many examples of it in European museums, I think even in some American ones, and none in Bangladesh. And I'm like, oh God, it was awful.
I think that happens quite a lot with,
sadly.
Yeah, with artifacts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, give it back, Britain. Come on. Let's get these
that
threads
is not
back.
yours. Put it down. Put it down.
So you're too prudish to even want that. Come on.
You're going to get a timeout. I'm just saying.
Oh, well, speaking of a timeout, we're going to wrap this episode up. And Nghi, thank you so much for chatting with Greta and I today. We really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so
Thank
much fun.
you.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
You've just been full of wondrous facts and random stories. I feel like next time we're at a con together, like we legit have to hang out and just
Absolutely.
like share
Absolutely.
stories. And only until 9 p.m. though.
Then you have to release me back into the wild.
Yeah. It's like go home and like play video games. And
Exactly.
Could you please let everyone know where they can find you online?
Okay. I'm at nghivo.com at my website, and I'm also Nghi Vo on Blue Sky these days.
Fantastic. And you can go pick up a bunch of short works. None of them are super long, so be happy about that. You can get The Singing Hill Cycle, which is 5 novellas. You can get Siren Queen, which is a short book. You can get The Chosen and the Beautiful, which is another short book. And you can get The City in Glass, which is the shortest of the short books. And I hope you'll support me, this wonderful human being, and go pick up one of those at least.
Woohoo. Do it.
Right. And you can also follow SFF Addicts at sffaddictspod on Instagram, Twitter, Threads, all that jazz. And you can follow me at Adrian M. Gibson. You can get Mushroom Blues in ebook, paperback, and hardcover. Audiobook is going to be out very soon. So stay tuned for that. Keep your ears. I was about to say keep your ears peeled, but keep them open because nobody wants to peel their ears. Greta, where can people find you?
I'm at Greta K. Kelly on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. And you can get all of my books in whatever format you want, pretty much anywhere. But The Queen of Days recently came out in paperback, so you should check that one out too.
All right, well, that's it for this episode. Stay tuned next week for part 2 with Nghi for our mini masterclass on convincing details and descriptions. For now, keep reading, keep imagining, and we'll see you next time on SFF Addicts.